All right, welcome back here to wrap up the first hour of the weekend edition of the KE Report. I know I said that I would be getting a couple company updates, but I decided to release a couple of those updates earlier this week, so please be sure to check out that Novo update as well as some of the other company updates from earlier on in the week. I'm wrapping up this first hour instead with Jordan Royburn, founder and editor of the Daily Gold. And Jordan, you and I were chatting off mic, and you were expressing just how bullish you are for the precious metals and mostly the precious metal stocks moving into 2020. I'm going to throw it over to you first. Please outline some of the reasons why you're so bullish.
Well, Corey, it's real. I mean, there's a fundamental and a technical component to that. Technicals are basically what's happening in the stocks is making me very confident that we are going to get a big breakout next year. And so the sector has been in correction mode since the beginning of September. So that's 3 full months now. And what we're seeing, I can just rattle off some bullish points. Okay, first, if we look at GDX and we look at the low we had roughly a year ago or 15 months ago, GDX has not even done the 38% retracement of that, which I think is at 2570. It's come really close to doing so. So it's basically held above the minimum threshold for a correction. I mean, it's missed it by, I guess you could say, 1%. So it's digesting the gains really well. It's holding above those. Secondly, if you look at the price action, it's held above 26, I believe, 3 or 4 times. And so naturally, the breakout was above 25, so we assumed that GDX would come back and test 25, maybe even 24.50. I mentioned that a few times, so that hasn't happened. It's held above 26 3 times. And if you look at GDXJ, that's held above 36 about 6 times in the last couple of months. So again, the miners, they're digesting their gains really well. They're holding above, just slightly above the levels we thought they would test. That's showing strength. Back to GDX, the advanced decline line, I believe yesterday it hit a 3-year and a 3-month high. So you have a very strong positive divergence in the advanced decline line, which basically, 7 or 8, I'm looking back over the years, and there's all but one time the advanced decline line has its leading signal has been correct. So that's a good sign. And then we look at the fact that the miners are holding up better than the metals. That's a good sign. You look at the relative strength in silver stocks, that's a great sign. And GDXJ has also been a little bit stronger than GDX. During a correction, we would expect GDXJ and the silver stocks SIL basically to be weaker than GDX, and that's the exact opposite of what's happening. If you look at a ratio chart of how GDXJ and SIL are performing against GDX, they're basically in the last couple months, they've kind of moved into a new uptrend territory. Again, that's happened while the sector's been in a correction. So we're seeing lots of good sign in the stocks. I know that we still have a high net spec position in gold, and the silver, the metal is not looking too hot. Those charts are not that, they're not that bullish from a short-term standpoint. But everything I look at in the stocks is making me really optimistic for next year. We have these huge bases in GDX and GDXJ, and the stocks are acting exactly as we want to see, ahead of the first test of a major breakout. And finally, I'll just say, I've written about a little bit, the fundamental outlook as far as the larger macro picture, Corey. One way or another, it's going to be bullish for precious metals. I don't see a realistic scenario that's not bullish for precious metals. I mean, either the Fed is going to have to cut rates again, or if they don't cut rates, they're going to let inflation run. And in the last week or two, we've seen multiple Fed heads talking about that, well, we need to move up our 2% threshold to 2.5%. And then Powell had some quote about, he said, once inflation hits the target, we're not even going to consider raising rates for a significant period of time. So this is what the market is sensing at least as far as the stocks. Technicals look great. The fundamentals, again, I don't see a scenario realistically that's going to be bearish. for precious metals. So I love how everything is setting up for 2020. And look, any weakness that we see over the coming days and the coming weeks is going to prove to be a buying opportunity, in this sector with respect to the stocks.
Wow, I am a little bit surprised to hear just how bullish you are, but I think that's very noteworthy. And I think the real takeaway here is just how well the stocks have been doing, which is encouraging because the stocks really have been kind of the laggards during that move up in gold. And now even silver stocks doing well, GDX doing well, GDXJ holding up nicely. In terms of time frame, though, are you expecting a rally into the end of the year, even if, say, we are going to get a bit of a move even higher in U.S. equity markets? The U.S. equity markets closed the week quite strongly.
It's tough to say. I mean, looking at GDX, GDXJ, and the HUI, those are all they're selling off today, but yesterday they kind of hit short-term resistance. I did a flash update, and I was talking about. I have some breadth indicators where I look at the percentage of stocks that are above the 20-day and the 50-day moving average, and basically the percentage of the Huey and GDXJ above the 20-day was about 90%. So when it gets up that high, you tend to get a little short-term pullback. So a rally into the end of the year, it really depends from what level. If we sell off a little bit more here, then sure, it's possible we could see a little bit more of a pop in the miners, but as far as the next few days, I still see weakness. I guess I should say. But I'm the short term. I'm not really sure as far as when we're going to see the miners rally up to those September highs.
That's fair. So it sounds like very much a buy the dip mentality if there is any more dips for something like the metals or precious metals stocks. Like have a position in the stocks you like, and if it just so happens that any of those stocks do go through a bit of selling into year end or even early on next year, you know what, be building positions. What would it take, though, Jordan, on the flip side to dissipate some of this bullishness? You mentioned 26, they're that level quite regularly for GDX. What if GDX does drop below 26? Would that turn you a bit more bearish, or is this holding this level for so long, it will still keep you in the bullish camp?
It will still keep me in the bullish camp. I know we have to look at the other side of the argument and always consider that, but just the evidence that I'm looking at, it just keeps piling and piling up to the bullish side. The only caveat I would say is I don't know if the GDX is going to, break 31 in the next couple months. Maybe it doesn't happen until the spring. I don't really have a strong view on when that's going to happen. At this point, I'll just be lazy and say sometime next year, probably sometime in the first half. But I mean, the reality, Corey, is looking at GDX and GDXJ, strong support in GDX at 26, strong support in GDXJ for 36. And, I don't really like to call bottoms, but, I think that as far as the correction in the stocks, the bottom is probably in. I mean, if we see gold go below 1450 or 1440, because there's more, we have to get that net spec position down, which can either happen by a price correction or gold goes sideways for several more months. Even if gold goes down to test 1400, I don't think GDX and GDXJ would break below those aforementioned support levels. I don't see that. So look, you said it. This is just a buy the dip mentality. It's a time to buy and hold. As long as things are acting well, you continue to hold those positions. And I mean, I just love how the market is setting up right now. I think the next 12 to 18 months could be really fantastic for this sector.
All right. That is very encouraging for everybody because I have to say, Jordan, one of the reasons why I like talking with you so regularly is you're not afraid to outline the bearish argument, but hearing all the things that are lining up, that is very encouraging. Does any of this relate to a potential U.S. market sell-off or even continued weakness in the U.S. dollar? We saw the U.S. dollar just recently, this week even, testing out some lower areas of this uptrend it's been in.
Yeah, that would obviously help. I mean, the dollar chart, just taking a quick look at it, it does look kind of concerning. We do have that double top from the beginning of September, beginning of October. And then the price action since November looks like a lower high. Obviously, time will tell, if we have seen a top in the dollar or not. The S&P, it did have a little correction. But honestly, I think the market with respect to the miners is sensing the coming positive fundamentals. And when fundamentals are that strong, like one way or another, the market is going to find a way to move higher. So at this point, I like the reason that precious metals and the stocks especially break out next year, the exact reason for that, we're not going to know until after the fact. Like, is that going to be, the economy weakening and growth going towards zero, where the Fed has to cut rates below 1%? Is it going to be the dollar's rolling over and it's going to be in a new downtrend? Is it going to be the S&P runs out of steam and there's a threat of a bear market? Or is it going to be the S&P keeps going up and people are worried about inflation and the dollar rolls over and the Fed is have this new policy where they're basically not going to hike rates forever? I don't know exactly which of those reasons it's going to be, but looking at the larger fundamental picture, one or a few of those things are probably going to come to pass for precious metals. And, again, you have to look at both the fundamentals and the technicals, but technicals, they tend to lead fundamentals. So, but you do want to look at both. And so that's why I love the setup in the miners, but I'm also assessing fundamentals to make sure that they're in agreement and that I'm not way off on the wrong foot. And again, when I look at fundamentals, just the scenarios that could play out, the majority of them are gold bullish. I don't see a bearish scenario for gold next year. And, that aligns with what I'm seeing in the technicals.
All right, Jordan, very interesting and very encouraging for the precious metal bulls out there. I'm going to be holding a lot of the shares that I hold and hopefully buying some maybe little dips that come into some of the stocks that I like. But we have already started to see some of the companies that I like continue to move higher even after a little bit of a sell-off. So encouraging across the board on especially the technical front, with finally how the shares could be leading some of these metals higher, especially into next year and throughout next year. Jordan, thanks for joining us. Thanks for wrapping up the first hour of this weekend show. Again, everyone, please keep the questions coming. Email me, fleck@kereport.com. Let me know what you think of all the companies I'm interviewing, any questions for management teams, and for all the guests that I have on if you want us to take a look at any stocks in particular or any topics that you want us addressed. Jordan, again, thanks for your time this weekend. Have a great rest of your weekend.
For our upcoming appearance schedule, visit kereport.com. The Corlin Economics Report will be back in just a moment.